What's going on, GameLeap? This is the Jizz, and 12.3, the patch notes have been released by Rito on Twitter, and we are here to bring you the updated tier list for next patch based on these changes. And let me just say that there have not been these bigger changes in a while on the Rift, so we're going to break all of these down and give you the best and worst champions for each role in the next week or so. And to master any of the champions in these tier lists, make sure to check out the GameLeap website in the description and comment section for all your League of Legends needs. We're talking challenger courses, guides, high elo VOD analyses that our professionals point out so you can become the best player you can be. So get that exclusive access by signing up. And let's start off the tier list by talking about the top lane tier list coming for 12.3, and there are so many changes hitting the top lane next patch. So already in the broken tier, you can see 3 new additions, these being Riven, Fiora, and Darius. And the reason for these champions being in the broken tier for 12.3 is because of all the changes coming in to the fighter mythics and legendary items. So for Riven, with Gold Drinker giving you 10 extra AD, which is going to help with Death Stance new healing, and it's also building out a Coolfield Warhammer, which gives you ability haste, which is one of the most important stats for Riven. And then as far as the Black Cleaver changes go, with 5 more AD, and then the ability haste going up by 5 too. This is super nice. And as far as Death Stance goes, now it's blocking physical and magical damage, and like I said, it's also healing now off your bonus AD instead of your max HP. And for a champion like Riven, where you're building so much attack damage in your items, this is just huge. Now Fiora, just like Riven, is going to benefit from the Gold Drinker attack damage buff, and also the fact that it's building out a Coalfields Warhammer. And just like Riven, she's also going to benefit from the Death Stance buff, the Black Cleaver buff, and also the Ravenous Hydra buff, so it's just giving you an extra 5 attack damage off the rip, which remember will get pumped into the new healing from Death Stance. These are all crazy buffs for these fighters, and it should also be mentioned here that Maw of Malmortius is giving more AD, more ability haste, and the shield you get from Maw is also scaling off your bonus AD, and you're getting 12% Omni Vamp as well when the shield actually procs. So these changes are huge for these champions, and the same goes for Darius. But what's interesting for Darius is the new Trinity Force. So it's giving you more HP, but the actual stacking from the threefold strike passive, this is actually cut in half, so from 6% to 3%. Now this certainly means something, but when you pair this with the new Steris gauge, because you're getting 40% base AD as bonus AD, this actually stacks with Trinity Force's threefold strike passive because you get base attack damage from this. So for a champion like Darius, who has some of the highest base attack damage, this is definitely going to be better. And seeing as you kind of do fall off, especially in team fights because of your lack of mobility, this just gives you more offensive power. So if you do actually grab onto someone, there is no chance they avoid the grey screen. And if we keep these changes in mind, you can see that lots of these fighters and bruisers are still in the higher tiers here. So you can see Aurelia in S tier, Loki broken, we have Renekton, and also Yone here, who's interesting to point out because of the new Death Stance. So after getting Shield Bow, Mortal Reminder, or Infinity Edge, what you can get now as your third item is Death Stance, and this is going to make assassins like Yone just unkillable and way too tanky. And their damage, let's face it, is not going to drop off one bit. So this is definitely going to make Yone a bit of a powerhouse, and just wait until you see the mid lane tier list. And these changes have also brought Alawi and Aatrox up a tier, but they have demoted Urgot from S tier all the way down to A tier because the Black Cleaver changes, well, it's giving you 100 less HP in this interaction with Titanic Hydra's passive, so it's converting your bonus HP into bonus AD. If you do get less HP from your items, this means you're not going to hit as hard. Now another change that's hitting the Rift in 12.3 is the buff to Blade of the Ruined King. So it's costing an extra 100 gold, so 3,300 overall, but you are going to be dealing more damage based off the opponent's maximum HP. So for champions like Aurelia and Jax, these auto attackers who love going Blade of the Ruined King, and you can also see Vayne in low-key broken, because I think if you see a tank locked in on the enemy team, so let's say an Ornn in the top lane, picking Vayne is probably going to be the most effective champion because you will shred them with the new Blade of the Ruined King. Now as far as champions go in the top lane who have been directly buffed or nerfed, well, one of these is Quinn, so the attack speed you get from your W in the early game, this is actually up. This will be kind of nice for the early laning phase, but it won't be substantial. But you're getting another buff in terms of your ultimate's damage. So instead of being based off 40% of your total AD, this is now going to 70%. But the issue with this is that you would want to max your Q first, so the W buff, it's a little bit redundant given what Riot want to do to your ultimate. But still, buffs are buffs, and Quinn is still in a good position, so she remains in the S tier. Now we also have to talk about Akshan, who's getting nerfed, so your passive single shot movement speed is down in the early game, and in the top lane, because the lane is a lot longer than the mid lane, this means that these fighters and bruisers, most of which who have been improved, are going to chase you down more and kill you more. And also your 3-stack damage from your passive, this is also down by 10 at each stage of the game. So your damage output and your mobility have been nerfed. So a ton of changes are hitting the Rift in 12.3, guys, in the top lane, and I'd love to know your thoughts down below on who you think these changes really benefit and who the most broken champions you think are going to be for the next patch. Now let's head to the mid lane and talk about this tier list because I know this is going to stir a lot of commotion. So you can see Yone and Yasuo, the two Wind brothers, and then Talon and Aurelia. And for the first two champions Yasuo and Yone, with the new Death Stance as their third item. Like, we've already been through this, it's just going to be so broken and so obnoxious to play against because they deal so much damage and pretty much take 0 damage. But we also have Talon here, because Talon can now opt to go for Gore Drinker. It's giving you more AD, and it's also building out of Caulfield's Warhammer, which gives you ability haste, which is very important for assassins. And on Talon, you could either go a really bruiser route with Gore Drinker, the new Black Cleaver, or what you could do is go Ghostblade into a Gore Drinker, kind of like the old build, and go full lethality just with the bruiser mythic in there. And as for Aurelia, just like we mentioned about Blade of the Ruined King getting buffed, this is really nice, and also with the new Death Stance, just like Yone and Yasuo, this is just going to be a massive pain in the backside to deal with. Now, as far as direct champion buffs and nerfs coming into 12.3, we have quite a lot for the mid lane. So first off, we have a nerf coming into Corki, who has been picked so much in pro play at the moment and banned. So what's happening is that your first package spawn timer, this is going up to 10 minutes, and the package respawn time is up an extra minute to 5 minutes. Now in pro play, your package, it is probably the biggest game-changing ability in the game at the moment. So because Corki in pro play is just picked and banned a heck of a lot, this is really a nerf for that level of play. So if you are playing him in solo queue, in any rank, it shouldn't really mean that much, but for sure you might get less kills because of it, but he's still broken. Now, two other mid laners who are picked and banned a lot at the moment in pro play, these are Twisted Fate and LeBlanc, who are also getting nerfed. So for TF, your Q's damage, the base damage is down at later ranks, but it is scaling more off your AP. So what Ryder tried to do here is to encourage you to build more ability power, because at the moment, Twisted Fates are really going more of utility builds with Everfrost, Rapid Fire Cannon, Zonya's Hourglass. They don't give you the most ability power. And they're also nerfing the attack speed you get from your E. So instead of being 20% at rank 1, it's now 10%. This is quite a big hit, but it is still scaling to 40%, but you max it last. So for Twisted Fate during the laning phase, this not just affects your trading, but also your wave clear, because your E's, in some matchups you might get this at level 1, this is certainly going to have a big impact. But to be honest, Twisted Fate is still holding all the right cards, because your ultimate, just like Corki's package, is one of the deadliest abilities on the Rift at the moment, because the teleport changed from 12.1. And like I mentioned, the Everfrost and Rapid Fire Cannon build, it is just too broken and affordable at the moment for Twisted Fate to abuse. So these nerfs are nerfed, but they don't really hit him where it hurts, which is kind of the opposite for the LeBlanc nerf. So what's happening is that your W's damage your distortion, the base damage is down from rank 2 onwards, and this certainly means something because you do max your W first, and your W is an important ability, not just for damaging the enemy champions, but also your wave clear, which is one of LeBlanc's big weaknesses, and this is why she is in B tier. And the last massive change, guys, we have coming into 12.3, these are the changes to Ahri, but to be honest, it doesn't really matter what the changes are. Even if you get another stack off your ultimate off takedowns, who cares about that when you are going to be the squishiest champion in the game? Your base armor is going to be 18. Imagine playing against a Talon, a Yasuo, a Yone, an Aurelia, a Zed, a Kiana as the new Ahri. Even in the mid to late game when you start teamfighting, taking one auto attack from an enemy AD carry, you're going to be like half HP. And Ahri mains, I'd love to know what you think of the new changes, and do you think she would be as bad as I think she'll be? So those are really the big talking points for the mid lane, guys, in 12.3. Now let's head to the bot lane and talk about the best AD carries for the next patch. So we'll start with the broken tier, of course, and you can see Caitlyn is here despite getting nerfed. So your AD growth, this is down by 0.4, which during the late game is going to mean something, and your Q's secondary damage, so the targets your Q hits after the first, this is down by 10%. So what this might mean is that you will no longer be able to one-shot the caster minions once you have Gale Force and the Collector. But the thing is, this is not what is making Caitlyn strong and really the meta-defining AD carry at the moment, especially in pro play. The reason she's strong is because of how lethal tempo works with Caitlyn, because of her innate range. It's the highest out of all the AD carries during the laning phase, and when you pair this with lethal tempo, no one can get close to her, especially when you're as good as some of the best AD carries in the world. It's very, very oppressive. Now for the rest of these, there's pretty standard stuff in the broken tier with Vayne, Jhin, and Jinx, and I was very tempted to put Yasuo in broken tier just because of their Death Stance buff, but I have too much self-respect. Now another champion who's getting targeted by Riot in 12.3, in terms of the AD carry role, this is Senna. So what Riot are doing, they're dropping the Q buff. So we mentioned in yesterday's video how they were going to nerf the Senna's slow in her Q down to 10% from 20%. Well, this is no longer happening. So instead what Riot are doing, the soul drop rate on minion kills, this is going down to 2.7%. So this is down from 10%. This pretty much kills AD carry Senna. So the only real way to play Senna in 12.3 is as a support, and this is why she's in the Chemtech Drake tier all the way down at the bottom. Now another AD carry getting nerfed to 12.3, this is Zeri. So your ultimate is no longer going to gain stacks from Rune Hunt's Hurricane, but maybe the saving grace here is the fact that for Zeri, Black Cleaver looks better, Trinity Force might be better because of the extra HP, so not all hope is lost. So Zeri mains, let me know what you think of this nerf. Is this going to go your champion, yes or no? Leave your thoughts in the comments. But there is one champion, guys, who's really going to benefit from the item changes, and this champion is Ezreal, who is residing in low-key broken. So if we think about Ezreal, he is one of those really annoying AD carries to balance around because he can abuse a lot of the bruise bruiser and fighter items because he loves sheen and also a bit of tankiness. So if we think of Ravenous Hydra giving 5 extra AD, if we think of Moira Malmortius giving AD, haste, and also a shield, which is going to give you Omnivamp, which is going to be super nice. So for Ezreal, just like a lot of the champions we mentioned, it's going to be a very interesting 12.3. Now we'll stay in the bot lane here and talk about the supports for 12.3. So because Senna is now going to specifically be a support, and the fact that her slow, so the 20%, is still going to be exactly the same, she comes in the broken tier alongside Janna, who's actually getting a bit of a bug fix, so her E no longer impacts the scaling of Glacial Augment, but ever since her rework last patch, Janna has been performing at a very high level, and this is in all elos. With Glacial Augment, with your new Q, it's very hard to dodge, and it can be very impactful during the laning phase and also in teamfights. Now we also have Blitzcrank, because the meta in the bot lane at the moment is really based around lethal tempo, and these AD carries and even supports who do well with them, so poking supports like Soraka, Sona, Karma, these champions are pretty immobile, so one Blitzcrank hook is going to result in death, so he comes in and broken, just like Sona, who is performing at a very high level just like Janna across all elos. And another champion who's high in this tier list, so Brand sitting in S tier, is actually getting some nice buffs in 12.3. So there are two changes here, and the first one is to Brand's passive, so the mana refund is now also going to occur if the spell kills the enemy. So this is a tiny improvement because you don't need the enemy to be ablaze to get the mana regeneration, and you also get that effect if you kill the target with only the damage of your ability or some item effect added to the ability, so this is nice. But what might even be better here is the second buff, and this is to Brand's ultimate, which will now bounce to nearby enemies before bouncing to Brand at full range. Because in some situations in skirmishes and teamfights, there might be the odd chance that the ultimate bounces back to you instead of to the enemy champions, so this will definitely improve Brand in those big teamfights, so watch out for Brand in 12.3. And the other really big support change for 12.3 is the change that is coming to Nami. So essentially what's happening here is that from your passive you are gaining more movement speed, and for lots of Namis at the moment, most of them going Imperial Mandate, what could be even more viable next patch is Shirelia's Battle Song as your mythic item. Because with lower cooldowns, when you're in those team fighting situations and you have multiple allied champions around you, being able to boost their movement speed as much as possible with your abilities, this could be really big. Even with your tidal wave, the fact that the movement speed is doubled, this could be really impactful with Shirelia's Battle Song, so it will definitely be interesting to see what the meta becomes for Nami in 12.3, but she is S tier just because she's a very good support at the moment. And the other champion worth noting here is Talia in the S tier as well, and Talia as a support has really taken off in recent times because she has a lot of stuff going for her. She has really good poke, she has good wave clear, and if you land one seismic shove, the enemy champion, regardless of their attack support, is probably going to hit the deck. And another big benefit of playing Talia support is of course your roaming potential with your passive and your ultimate. This allows you to get around the map and roam for pretty much free. Now obviously the last role we have to talk about, this is the jungle role, and because lots of fighters and bruisers reside in the jungle, those changes to all those top lane items are going to impact the jungle as well. But as far as the broken tier goes, here we have Nunu, Rek'Sai, and Fiddlesticks. These three are very standard, nothing is really going to impact them that much, but the interesting one here is Kayn, and a bit like Talon, if you're going bruiser or assassin Kayn, so Rast or Shadow Assassin, both built with the new Gore Drinker, so more AD, and it's also building out a Caulfield's Warhammer for the ability haste. This is going to see him become insanely strong, especially once you build the new death stance. Even though this is costing 3,300 gold, which is pretty expensive, you just get so much for it now because it's blocking both physical and magical damage, and the healing is also scaling off your bonus AD. And for a champion like Kayn, because you do really care about attack damage, this is just going to be massive, so Kayn is in the broken tier. And for the same reasons, we also have Talon in low-key broken, because the nerf to his W in terms of jungle monster damage, this is 105% now. It's gone down like 45% in the last couple of patches, so your clear definitely isn't as strong, but because of potential Gore Drinker, Ghostblade, Lethality, or even Bruiser setup with the new items is going to be very powerful. This is the reason why Kayn is broken. Talon has to be in consideration too. And as far as champion buffs and nerfs go, we have two jungle champions who are going to get changed in 12.3, and the first of these is Lilia. You can see her residing in the A tier, and the reason Lilia is here is because Riot are semi-reverting the nerf that came in during Season 11, where they reduced your Lilting Lullaby sleep duration, but now it's going back to 2 seconds all the way up to 2.5 at level 16. So hopefully this will give Lilia a bit more impact in those games. And we also have the changes coming to Amumu, and there are two nerfs here. Now the first of these, your armor per level, this is down to 3. This means you're going to be squishier and more killable for the enemy champions, and you'll also be a little bit lower during your clear. And the other nerf here is so that Zeri, so the new champion, can actually deal damage to Amumu now. So what's happening is that the maximum damage reduction in your E is 50% of damage instance. So this won't impact Amumu's win rate at all, it's just more of a bug fix than anything. So those were the tier list guys for 12.3. Let me know in the comments who you think is going to be the most busted, low-key broken, or even Chemtech Drake champions of the next patch. And as always, make sure to leave a like down below. Also make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future daily uploads. And until tomorrow's daily upload, this has been the Jib.